All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We have a good number of participants, and I'm sure more will be joining throughout the talk. Welcome to the AI in Higher Education webinar. My name is Jim Wilgenbush. I direct research computing at the University of Minnesota, and I'm here with Dr. Scott Latham, and it is my honor and pleasure to introduce and moderate today's AI in Higher Education webinar. We have an exciting topic on hand, but first let me just briefly introduce Dr. Latham for you. After a successful career in the IT industry, where Professor Latham witnessed the dot-com disruption firsthand, he earned a PhD in business policy and strategy. His research has focused on organizational decline, innovation, and more recently, the future of work. He has been published in top practitioner and academic journals in his field, including MIT Sloan Management Review, Harvard Business Review, the Academy of Management Review, Journal of Management Studies, and the Chronicle of Higher Education. And it is in the Chronicle of Higher Education that he recently published what has become somewhat of a talked about, or even maybe some would say controversial essay that is titled, "Are We Ready for the AI University?" And so during this webinar, Dr. Latham is going to talk about that, and he's also going to share his insights that he's gained from dozens of conversations with faculty, university presidents, think tank analysts, AI entrepreneurs, and administrators across the nation in response to this publication. Based on these ongoing conversations, he holds that there are 5 key considerations that college and university stakeholders must address to capitalize on the tremendous opportunity AI presents to help reinvent the academy. And I'm not going to tell you what those are, but Dr. Latham is, and that's why I am so excited to hear from him, and very happy that you could all join us for this conversation. And so with that introduction, Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate the introduction. I'm honored to be here. 1 second. I'm only seeing the present splash slide. Are my slides going to come on the screen? There we go. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So again, Jim, thank you for the kind introduction. I am honored to be here. I'd also like to thank Haley Brock and Amanda Schwartz for making this happen. When you reached out early this spring, I was very excited, again, as you and I discussed, Jim, to be part of this conversation. As Jim alluded to, I guess the foundation for today's webinar will be an essay that I wrote in the Chronicle at the end of the last semester, titled, "Are We Ready for the AI University?" And it represents, okay, 1 second. I'm going to stop my share for 2 seconds because it's not responding to my click. So hold on 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Okay, here we go. Apologies for the hiccups there. It's not responding. In that essay will be the basis for the broader discussion. But there are 2 other, I think, main themes that I want to contribute to the discussion. So the first is the essay, and I'd like to walk folks through some of my thinking and how I arrived at the notion of an AI university. And then I want to offer kind of a movie trailer relative to some research that I did this past summer with the Chronicle as a follow-up to the essay. And in that survey, we reached out and talked to about 1,000 different folks in the academy, 500 faculty members, 500 administrators, to get their sense of where AI is as far as its rate of adoption in the academy, as well as how it's shifting things like the value proposition. And then, as Jim suggested, I'd like to offer, I guess, 5 points of guidance that, based on the survey, and as well as the countless discussions I had over the summer with leaders in the academy, AI visionaries, folks on the administrative side of the fence, and faculty, that I think every institution needs to be considering, and not only at the upper end or upper echelons of the institution, but throughout. And then we'll finish up with a Q&A. As I said, in preparation for this, I'm happy to take questions during the presentation. I'll do my ability to think quick on my feet. So I wrote this essay back in April. And before I offer you the basis of the essay, what I'd like to do is just give you a quick background about me, largely because I think it will give you a sense of the biases that I have when I approach this topic. I was born and raised in Lowell. It was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, which, as you'll see in a few slides, I think is very central to this wave of AI and this disruption of the way industries operate. I worked in the IT industry for a decade, largely in geographic information systems and in the ERP industry, and saw the dot-com boom and bust firsthand. And it was that boom and bust that was the foundation for my dissertation. I did an analysis of the dot-com bust to see which organizations made it, which didn't. And that has consistently been a stream of research that I've done over the past 25 years now on innovation, disruption, and decline. In addition to my publications, I've had numerous grant funding from the Department of Labor, the Fed, National Science Foundation, all around those ideas. In addition to faculty member, I have also served as a dean and the vice provost for workforce development here in the Boston area. So I am, I think, well-versed in the various facets that AI is going to affect the university. I also want to stress, because when I have discussions about the essay and my perspective on AI in higher education, many of these boil down to me being pigeonholed as pro-AI or carrying the water for technocrats. And that's just not the case. I used to be a member of the resistance. A year prior to the publication of my Chronicle piece, I published a piece in the Inside Higher Ed, and it was titled, as you see here, Memo to the Faculty, AI is Not Your Friend. And that was published in June of 2024. And then about a year later, I shifted my perspective on AI and published this piece. Are you ready for the AI University? And I offered that juxtaposition, I think, to illustrate that I wrote this essay with a lot of mixed emotions, a lot of conflict, because I believe strongly in the academy and what our mission and what our existential narrative is relative to educating, a populace that can participate in, a broad democracy. I really do believe in that. And I think AI is going to be a part of that, whether we're ready for it or not. So the Chronicle piece, when I say what is an AI university, I would ask you to reflect on an accreditation body asking how AI is integrated in the pedagogy. A potential faculty member asking if there is a deep research platform present on the campus. A student asking if AI is part of your mental health strategy. A parent asking if the university offers AI-led classes. A student asking if AI is going to help them find a job. Is AI fluency part of the curriculum? Will they learn how not only to use AI, but to work with AI and make decisions with AI? In the administrative side of things, whether or not AI is being used to help increase yield and retention. And then finally, and I do think this is right around the corner, whether or not students will be provided personalized AI agents that will help them navigate higher education. This is what I mean when I say the AI university. I believe that we are going to see over the next decade, from about 2025 to 2035, AI touch every aspect of the traditional institution. I think it'll change the way students go to school, the way faculty run institutions, run the classroom, the way administrators run their institutions, the way we interact with external stakeholders such as industry partners. You would be hard pressed to find any aspect of the day-to-day college not being touched by AI. I also think that a lot of folks are looking at AI in the wrong light. The issues that have higher education has faced over the past decade that have kind of culminated in the past year existed long before artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a means for addressing some of those issues. It is not something that exasperates those issues. But why is this happening now? Why is AI making such quick inroads into the academy? And I'd like to just offer a theoretical basis to that. And this is a theoretical basis that I relied on for my dissertation. And it's the notion of something called creative destruction. And Joseph Schumpeter was a Harvard economist. He was an Austrian economist. And he made the broader claim or hypotheses that disruptive innovations take place when two conditions are satisfied. The first is when there's a broken cost structure in the industry, meaning that the companies or the organizations in the industry can no longer make money delivering the value to the consumer. In this case, it's a college and a student. And the second condition that needs to be satisfied is when there's a lagging value in the industry, when the actual people that come to that industry to get some sort of value are no longer convinced that it's worth the time and effort. And that is, for me, why the soil of higher education is so fertile for artificial intelligence. There's a broken economic model. The traditional fixed cost or amortizing our fixed costs with scale, putting more students into a classroom, more students into a dorm, no longer works. And there's a broken value proposition. We've all seen the larger debate of whether or not a college education is still worth it. And I think they just released the Pew survey number earlier this week, and that number continues to decline. So when you factor in those two things, the broken economic model in higher education and the declining value proposition, relative to date, how the student gets the education, there's a lot of pain associated with that for the student. And the emergence of what the Chronicle called the transactional student. For better or worse, many students now look at getting a college education. The primary outcome of that is to get a job. And that's what they mean with regards to transactional student. While we, a decade or 2 or 3 decades ago, may have gone to college to get a more worldly view, that's simply not the case anymore. And the data bears that out. So creative destruction happens as you look to the right of the slide. We saw it in the 19th century with the Industrial Revolution. We saw it in the earlier 20th century with mass production. We saw it just recently with IT and telecommunications. Now we're looking at AI, and biotech, and automation. And I'm not the first to make this contention around higher ed and creative destruction. Richard Vedder recently put out a book that looked exactly at this. I think it came out about 2-3 months ago. And I think it's an interesting read. So given that there is now an AI arms race underway, and I think it will be, for the most part, and I think right now it's being student-led. Students are going to expect that AI will help them in every aspect of their college experience. Savvy campus leaders are already starting to promote their institutions as AI-enabled or AI-driven. It will be part of their branding strategies. They will want to be seen as being on the forefront of this next wave of disruption. And they will want to be seen as leading this next wave of disruption. Sadly, and one of the things that does concern me is that we are going to now start to get a classist AI have and have not system emerge. You're going to see the usual suspects that have deep pockets and resources experiment with AI and bring that AI university to light. While on the other side of things, you will see some institutions, whether it be regional public universities, community colleges, struggle to keep up. And given the first point of students' expectation that AI will be on the campus, that will start to create a pretty significant schism, I think, again, over the next decade. I don't think that we can extrapolate from that top 10% of haves. I want to stress that I believe that AI will manifest and present itself differently on every campus. And that's one of the points that I'll make later in the presentation. So what does that look like over the next 10 years? And as we begin to go down that path of the AI university, you're going to see program development around AI. I can't go a day now without logging on to LinkedIn or the Chronicle and seeing a splash ad announcing a new AI program or a new program that integrates AI into their program. You're going to see automation using AI in basic administrative functions, like the registrar's office. There's an excellent example earlier this summer of Notre Dame using AI to automate the transfer of credit process. You'll see AI change the way we do enrollment. We are now getting down to student by student enrollment targeting using AI. You'll see AI co-teaching. There's an incredible new application now called Open Note. I would welcome that you start to play with these applications that is doing just that. It is doing tutoring and co-teaching at a level that I, a year ago, to my initial reluctancy, did not think would happen this quick. I teach strategy and innovation at the graduate and undergraduate level. I am now really highly suggesting my students that they use this application. In effect, I am co-teaching with AI. You're seeing the emergence of collaborative AI research platforms. Here locally, UMass Medical has launched an AI platform for translational healthcare. We've seen ones at Stanford and Michigan. And the goal with these platforms is to expedite the front end of the research process. I think most R1 institutions will eventually have AI-driven platforms that are used throughout the institution, but importantly in what I would see are clusters of AI, the same way we have sport clusters and conferences. AI-led classes, interesting. I'm in the Boston area, and most of the people that I talk to are in the Boston area. There are now institutions in Boston and nationwide that could offer solely AI-led classes, but there's one hiccup, and that one hiccup is parents. It's the rule of 50-50. The data suggests that about 50% of parents pay about 50% of the tuition and cost of college. And the question, and what some of these institutions have found, is while our students are adopting AI at an amazing rate, parents are questioning whether or not they would send their child to an institution charging $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 to be taught by AI. So that's a significant hurdle around the adoption of AI. But I do think you'll see AI-led classes in the next year or two. The capability is already there. And I've already seen pilots of purely AI-led classes that do not need any human guidance or instruction. As I said a few minutes ago, I think you will see the same way that we have athletic conferences, you will start to see AI cluster conferences. That is, institutions that share common research themes that will share data across their institutions for a common goal or common end, whether that be in healthcare or climate change. You know, the one that it comes to mind, and I've been reading a lot about, I'm sure a lot of you have, is the Ellison Institute in Oxford. That is a research cluster founded solely on AI. AI administrators, we are now seeing in organizations using AI to validate their decisions. You're seeing people in governance positions ask, was AI involved in your decision? You will see provosts similarly use AI to look at the market for new programs. You will see provosts using AI to discontinue certain programs, target new markets, open new campuses. I think, again, as I've said, the AI University will span all functions in the institution. And then, if you're paying attention to OpenAI, I do think we will see students that have agents with them from the day they walk onto campus. In the same way they get a t-shirt that says the University of Minnesota or the University of Massachusetts, they will be provided an agent, and that agent will learn in real time and involve with that student across their undergraduate career. I also think it'll span their college career and be the basis for lifelong learning, which will present an opportunity for the institutions. There will be significant faculty attrition over the next decade. I don't think it will happen in a bang. I think it will happen as faculty retire. Sections of their discipline will be handed off to AI, and that will affect, I think, folks like myself, full professors in the academy with about 10 years left. When I retire, there will be an AI agent teaching strategy for the same sections that I will. I strongly believe this, given some of the earlier points I made. And there we'll have arrived at the AI University. So I'll pause here, Jim, for questions. If there's any that you're seeing in the chat, if not, a quick drink, and then we can talk about where some of the research I did over the summer.
Thanks, Scott. Right now, there are no questions, just obviously, I think it's obvious questions about how do people get a hold of this recording, and will the slides be made available? And I did answer in the Q&A that yes, these slides will be made available after the talk, and gave the link to where you can find the recording as well. And so if you registered, as all of you did, for the seminar, you also get a follow-up message with those links. So for right now, no questions. So I suggest moving on. But for the audience, if you do have questions, go ahead and type those in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to get to them at the next pause.
Thank you, Jim. So that was, I guess, encapsulation of how I view the AI University emerging and evolving over the next decade. And that essay was based, again, on my own research, dozens of conversations, and came to press in May of this year. Since then, and I think this is more interesting, or certainly complementary to the essay, this summer, I was involved in a research effort with the Chronicle, and the full survey will be available, I think, over the next month, they've indicated. And it helps, I think, address where the academy today is in this AI transformation. And they conducted a survey in the US. There was about 1,000 survey respondents, 500 faculty, and 5 administrators. The goal of the survey was to get these two critical stakeholder groups' attitudes towards AI's adoption, how it affected the value proposition, how it affects curriculum, general views on AI, how employers should be taken into account with regards to AI. And for me, the data was pretty telling. To the last part of the slide, there was a significant agreement on some aspects, but divergence on others between administrators and faculty. And so let me first talk about some of the common themes. There was significant agreement that AI will transform higher education. Now, I would just put a caution on that, because I think while both groups believe AI will transform higher education, there, as I'll illustrate, a different view on how that transformation should be addressed. They also believed that the value, going back to a few slides, AI calls into question the value offered by higher education and whether or not a degree is still going to be valued post-graduation. The next point, I think, was incredibly telling. Two-thirds of all participants, faculty and administrators, said that their AI strategy is lacking or non-existent. That was two-thirds. They both felt that employers need to be part of the equation, although what part of the equation, as I'll illustrate, is a little different. Faculty training was on the forefront of both parties. Faculty felt that they have been somewhat, not abandoned, but that they weren't being properly prepared for employing AI in the classroom. And the administrators felt the same. So I think for me, one of the most important points of the survey. And then both groups feel that, human instructors still need to be at the center of learning. But I think we do see a tale of two AI cities. Administrators largely viewed AI as an opportunity. They think it's a way to fix a lot of the ailments that have plagued higher ed over the past decade. Not surprising, they've had to make some of the tough decisions. Whereas faculty view AI as a threat. I think they are, at least cognizant that there might be some job disruption of AI of the traditional faculty role. Administrators view AI as a means for addressing structural issues such as scale, cost, and accessibility. Faculty view AI in a much less grand fashion. They view AI as an enabling tool. Administrators see faculty as being, they need to be the ones that train students to use AI for the real world. Faculty don't view AI as their bailiwick, and more so don't want to be AI trainers. Administrators would like to use AI to change curriculum structure, to be the basis for lifelong learning and for new and more rapid program development. Faculty believe AI needs to work within the current confines or the current degree structure. Administrators think that their job is to do AI strategy, and faculty believe that AI, their primary role has to develop policy to help students use AI in an ethical manner. So these 5 points are really significant differences. I think as a whole, both groups say AI is transforming higher education, but the outcome and the role of each group relative to the other group is, I think, concerning. I think given that 2/3 say that they don't see their institution having a formal strategy or having it be non-existent, I think there's a degree of AI paralysis. As a strategist, and I'm a behavioral strategist, our policies and our responses are inevitably shaped by our biases. And I think there are 2 different sets of biases here that are going to, maybe prevent a cohesive response and adoption of AI. I used the term from the book 2 decades ago. I think we're seeing administrators are from Venus and faculty are from Mars dynamic. And I don't know, again, this is, I think, going to be problematic for some institutions. But I think we need to move from shared governance to shared survival, and how, if we both recognize that AI is going to transform the academy, we need to focus on the common themes and really kind of ferret out where those differences emerge. I've seen a lot of that recently. You saw a recent paper published on against uncritical adoption of AI. There was an article in the Atlantic last week that basically said that college campuses should be moving to ban all technology. There is for lack of a better term, a Luddite movement that is emerging, I think, out of the summer. And I see some of this in this survey data. I think AI skepticism is healthy. I don't think AI Ludditism is. It just is not healthy. I don't think it benefits the academy. Because as I said earlier, if you look at who's leading AI adoption on campuses right now, for better or worse, it's students. It is. I see it in my classroom, and I've seen it in my conversations and talking to other people, and that needs to shift. Jim, I'm in my last section, and I think we're good on time. And I don't know if there's any questions or.
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions, Scott. So maybe just start off with a big one that I think we see in some of these other questions as well is what about the ethics of rapid AI adoption? And the person asking the question really nicely broke it out into three parts. One, there is the environmental impacts that have some ethical concerns. Two, there's the notion of what about, the fact that many of these models are trained on intellectual property and how do we account for ownership around things like that. And then the last is sort of what do we lose when we use AI in research and in education? What's lost in AI-led courses, in other words, and also in AI research or data analysis. So the ethics along those lines, if you could maybe provide some thoughts.
Sure. I've always prided myself on saying I don't know. So I've thank you first for the question. The first one on the energy, I do read the papers out there and the energy usage relative to AI when you do a simple prompt. I don't think it's contradictory. I think it's early. I think they are legitimate concerns. There are legitimate concerns on whether or not we have the capacity to have wide scale adoption of AI. And then there are the ones associated, with climate change and social responsibility. I couldn't offer a firm answer on either side of the fence. I do read it, and right now I would steer clear of that. On the IP side of things, I think that is why faculty have to get involved. I'll speak anecdotally to myself. I wrote a textbook 10 years ago, and it wasn't anything that I was ever going to rich off. It was actually a very inexpensive textbook. And I was just notified by the publisher and asked to sign off to make my text open for AI applications. And I talked to my co-author, and after significant deliberation in reading the sign-off, we agreed to open it up. Conversely, if you don't make your intellectual property available, it's not going to receive the distribution that it warrants. And I think we have to recraft how authors and creators are compensated for IP. But I think walling off the IP is not the way to go. If you look at the writer's strike last year out in Hollywood, that's a big part of this. They wanted to make sure that they would be properly compensated for their IP. I would say, and I'm not going to defend AI, but scholars haven't been properly compensated for their IP forever, if you look at the publishing houses. So we have a long track record of not being properly compensated. We do research, unless it's grant funded, we do it for free. In some disciplines, we pay to get it published. The publishers make millions of dollars off distributing it. If anything, again, I may be naive. I think AI is an opportunity to break up those publishing monopolies, those scholarly publishing houses. And I think we need to get more creative around how we fix the old model using AI. And we're starting to see that, I think. If you look at, top publications like Nature, they're using AI to get their material out there, and they're meta tagging it to ensure that the publishers are properly credited. Um, and then what's lost, again, I will speak to my general position on that. And this is where the faculty have to get engaged. This whole blue book movement, oral exam movement that I advocated for a year ago, it's just not going to work. So in my class, I will have them use AI. I will have them, share the outcomes, share some of the prompts, and then I press them. I'll ask them, well, what do you think? Did AI arrive at the outcome that you expected it to? Where could AI be wrong? We have to, I think of this really three buckets that a faculty has to do. The first one is, using AI, and that isn't my job, and the students do it better than me. Then there's working with AI, and that's where I try to press them. I try to get them to critically examine AI's input into their thinking. And then finally, making decisions with AI. And that's going to happen very quickly as we get AI agentic systems. And that's more of a value thing. So this is the moment for faculty to shine and to work with AI. We cannot put up walls around the academy. It won't work, whether it be protection of IP or what's lost in translation of slowing down the thinking for these students. And from my own experience, I think the students want that. I think they are even somewhat hesitant to rely so blindly on AI, and they're looking for us as the experts to help them. And that's how I approached that. So I don't know if that answered the question, but
Well, I think it does touch on three questions that came in that
yeah.
really are related on many levels, and I think relate specifically to that answer. Um, what are the role of professors and educators in general in this new era? But we also had the question of, if AI becomes an unsupervised instructor, shouldn't we fear AI hallucinations making their way into the curriculum? And then last, sort of again related to this general theme, is reflecting on your prediction of fully AI taught classes. Can you comment on the need for human oversight of these classes, both content and delivery?
So not coincidentally, and that just came out 2 weeks ago, this is the why language models hallucinate. And some of it I get, some of it I don't. And I don't think it's an important question. I don't think, if we go back to the field of innovation, there's a notion of over innovation and under innovation, and certainly hallucinations are of concern. But if you're asking the average AI large language model to tell you about the history of the Roman Empire, it does a pretty good job. If you ask it to design assessments for that topic, it does a pretty good job. It's at innovation. And the hallucinations, I think, if you were doing some type of critical application, whether it be in healthcare or public policy, yes, I think then that's where the human comes more into play. But I think for the standard undergraduate course, hallucinations and biased data are not as much of a concern as most people think. So that's what I would say around the hallucinations. Where does the human come in? The human, I think, as I said, comes in to help the student, push back on AI. It needs to arrive. I'm working on a paper now with the former assistant president at the University of Maine, a gentleman named Jim Page. And he had a wonderful analogy, and I want to give Jim full credit here, around global positioning and celestial navigation. And the Naval Academy, when the global positioning system came online, ended its instruction of the celestial navigation. And then very soon they backed off of it. And you might think, well, that's because what if the satellites go down or GPS fails? And certainly that is of concern. But the point is to be a sailor isn't just getting from point to A to B, it's understanding the underlying tenets of the system of navigation, and then understanding when they don't work, why they didn't work. And so Jim's contention is we need to work within AI the same way. Why did AI arrive at the conclusion it did? And when it isn't, the student needs to have the ability to recognize that something's amiss. And so we as instructors need to be able to help those students do that. Right now, they can't. I'm sure there are people on this webinar, and I see it as well, that they'll take AI as gospel. And yes, that is the concern. But we need to know, and we need to help those students. Why did it arrive? And if it goes wrong, why did it go wrong? And that's where I think the human individual plays a role, the human instructor.
We have a couple more questions, but I think in the interest of time, we'll hold those because I think they'll be relevant also at the end. And we want to be sure that you get to your 5 key questions. And so we're going to hold just a couple of questions for the next Q&A session.
Yeah. And so again, I just as I move into this next section, I am biased towards this. I have done a total 180 relative to the AI University. And these questions are based on, I spent all summer talking to people about AI across the globe at all different levels, and it was wonderful. I said it in my opening comments. I'm just happy to be part of this conversation. We're at 2025, and in 2035, when Scott Latham retires, I do think I will have contributed to the discussion. And I hope it's one that we do in an active fashion, not a passive fashion, meaning we're just going to let AI happen. So, the first one is who owns AI on the campus? What is the state of AI happening now on your campus? How do I help faculty adapt? How do we prepare students for the world of AI? And what's your institution's AI narrative? And I'm, again, going to share this presentation. I'm going to go through these in a quicker fashion, just so we can get to those questions. So the biggest question I get, or the biggest debate I get when I talk to campus leaders, is who owns AI on the campus? And the governance issues are huge. If you believe what I offer as an AI university, this is not a simple implementation of ERP. This isn't PeopleSoft. This will span the entire institution and touch every aspect of the institution. Do you need a singular person to own AI and the AI strategy? And I think, and if you look at the screen clip from MIT, and from it, if AI is strategic to what the institution's doing, and as I said, I believe it is, you need a chief AI officer. You just do. And I could back into that by telling you, well, you already have a CIO or a CTO. Well, they had a full-time job, and now you're going to tack this onto them. Could it be the provost? Sure. But again, most provosts had, a job prior to this, and now you're tacking on the biggest thing that they'll ever have to deal with. I don't know. And AI goes outside of academic affairs. It goes out. It is a strategic application. It is not solely an IT application. So I do think that most institutions need a CAIO. Second thing that I advise folks to do, because it always makes me laugh, is to do an AI inventory. If someone came onto your campus again and started to install ERP, you would never let them do it. Well, I get news for you. AI is already all over your campus. It is a grassroots movement. Your students, your faculty, both in pedagogy and in research, AI is already out there. I know of enrollment officers that use AI to run enrollment campaigns without sharing it with their higher ups. And it's working just great. And so you need to do an inventory, find out what's going on, and then going with the green analogy, you need to prune it. And then you need to invest in things that you think are strategic. That goes back to point one. Most institutions need a chief AI officer. The new faculty job, what does that new faculty job entail? I think that new faculty job entails AI in every aspect of their job. You know, if I was an associate or an assistant professor right now, I would be looking at how AI affects my discipline, how I can use it in the classroom. I would experiment. I would share with other faculty in my discipline. There's no turning back at this point. But if you're a faculty member and you're thinking about blue books and oral exams, you're thinking the wrong way. You really, really are. You know, you need to get AI fluent. As I said from the Chronicle survey over the summer, most faculty feel like they are not getting properly trained. They're not getting the proper guidance. That's a call out to any administrators or folks in that capacity. I think if instead of saying AI is going to take your job, and we work from a point of, hey, early mid-career professionals, AI is going to be part of your job. Let's help you get there. I think that's a much better message than you're, going to be displaced. This slide, I think students, again, our students have reached the pinnacle of their AI adoption. Ella Stapleton was the Northeastern University student that basically filed a complaint against her professor for using AI to teach. And I think we owe it better to the Ella Stapletons to be very transparent. Is AI in the classroom? What are you paying for? We can't just allow AI to be in the background and let the students lead. We need to do better by our students. And then finally, how do we create critical thinking? Every institution is going to have a different AI narrative. It will. I teach at UMass Lowell. We're half first gen. We're approaching half first underrepresented populations. We are going to use AI to better accentuate that narrative than someone like a Michigan, than someone like a Stanford or the University of Texas. And that's okay. That's the whole point. AI is not some out of the box canned application. It should be used in a manner, and it ideally should leverage the data on campus that makes your institution unique. Final thoughts, and then I'll take all the questions. I can be here as long as we want. There's no AI experts. I say that all the time. I am one person with one perspective on AI. I think you have a year or two, a year, not two. We're starting to see separation. More and more, I'm starting to see AI habs start to do things that are truly revolutionary. It's going to happen differently on every campus. And I think as someone who studies innovation, it has to be experiment, fail, share, learn, and just keep going through it. And that, my presentation. A few minutes late, Jim, but we had questions. And again, I want to thank Amanda Schwartz, Haley Brock, and Jim. So thank you.
Well, thank you. That was fantastic. And we do have some great questions that actually I think will fit in nicely here. We often talk about the benefits of AIs or AI and sometimes the drawbacks. Can you think of where we might be opening up job opportunities that under different circumstances would have been unimaginable? So given the AI, I assume here, given the AI revolution, what are new things that are opening up in the same way that we might have seen under the Industrial Revolution?
Sure. I think as far as jobs go, every day I typically read the Boston Globe, Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, and I'm constantly reading about AI. The Journal did an article last week about the whole notion of AI natives and how AI natives are incredibly marketable. And so I broadly want to say, I think that's part of what we do as faculty, get students comfortable with AI. And then as far as jobs go, I think one of the biggest areas, it goes to the creative economy. If you've seen some of the films, the artwork, the music that individuals have done with AI, it's stuff that you couldn't have done in the past. You couldn't have imagined. A good friend of my son, he is in film, and he's used AI to make a short film that would have taken him tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, would have taken him an incredible amount of time. And it is back to the earlier question, his IP that he's used AI to bring to life. So I think there is a broader, this, I firmly believe that there is a moment for the humanities here. I think AI is going to advance very quickly. And if you think about decisions, they're the baseline data driven decisions that are really rational decisions. But then if you go back to, some of the stuff that Simon did, the Nobel winning prize economist, more often than not, our decisions are irrational decisions. Even Kahneman, same deal. Those are rational decisions. They're AI may have a decision there, but those are value laden decisions. And I think to make value laden decisions, we need the humanities. I said in my essay, business people, they're going to advocate for AI because it's going to help the bottom line. Engineers and scientists, they're going to advocate because it's more efficient, it's interesting, it's more effective. But the humanities have an opportunity to be the heart of AI. And right now, I'm sorry to say this, I see too many people at UMass Lowell, where I'm at, on north is the STEM fields, and on south is the humanities and the social sciences. I see too many people on the other side of the river locally that are really trying to, again, put up a wall versus embracing AI. This is your moment, humanities. It is, you need to learn how to use AI, and you need to provide students the ability to help it make value laden, irrational decisions.
Excellent. That may have answered this question, but I'm gonna let you dive into it a little bit more. And that is that some faculty resist AI, as you're suggesting, and they might respond in behaviors that sort of end up punishing the student. Uh, are there things that the institution can do to reduce these behaviors and promote a constructive culture around AI in education? I think that's part of what you've been talking about all along, but maybe if you could give some more specific examples, that would help.
Sure. I think for me, when I have my students, I said it earlier, when I have them do their homework, or I call it the prep work, I tell them to use AI, and I tell them to come to class to be prepared. You know, how did they use AI, and do they agree with AI? And inherent there is the notion that you can disagree with AI. And I think we have to break what I call the AI gospel mentality, or this, again, bias that emerges that AI is always right, that AI always delivers the best decision, or AI delivers the best outcome. And that's what I am trying to break in my class. I'll give you a very specific example. Yesterday, I teach strategy. We use a case-based method. I have 8 teams in one class, and I have 6 in another. Across those 2 classes, and I really, really accentuate it, there were 14 different solutions. And that's what we have to show. I always say there's more than one way to skin the strategic cat. And there is no right answer that AI will arrive at. It's going to depend greatly based on your prompt, the data, and that's what the students have to see. So it just has to be transparent. It has to be. And we have not done a good job of that. The story of Ellis Stapleton was a great one. And as a faculty member, if I'm using AI, I'm happy to share with them. The other thing, and I do want to comment on this, is that as faculty members, there is our discipline, and we have always been the experts. AI equals or transcends that. We need to get more focus on the experiential side of things that happen outside of the classroom. And I think every discipline can do that. So, I have my students, certainly they use AI to understand theories and ideas and frameworks, but the application is going to happen outside the classroom, and it's going to happen. I have them work with nonprofits in the area, or I'll have them work with small businesses. You can't do the application through a chat GPT prompt. You can't. So
Thanks. This is a really important question, I think, because there will be a fair number of students in this position, and that is, for those students who are really trying to limit their environmental cost and don't want to use AI at all, what advice do you have for them or those that work with them if the future is AI? Is there a way for them to avoid it?
I don't think so. I don't. I think this is, for better or worse, this gets to the whole notion of the wave. Um, I said it earlier. I don't know, so I don't want to make any kind of ignorant statements relative to the climate implications of using AI. I've seen arguments made on both sides. I've seen emerging arguments that it's not as significant as we had initially thought. But then again, I would imagine we're not even at 1% of what we envision AI adoption to be. I'm confident that we will work in a way to minimize AI's impact on the environment. Again, I could be naive in that regard. Um, but no, I guess I don't have a good answer for that question, Jim, and I apologize. And it's something that, I'll look more at. So,
It's a tough question, and it's one that I think is actually appropriate to end with, um, because we are in a world now that has been transformed by this topic, and I really appreciate the thoughtful approach that you've taken to the realities that we're facing. If you haven't had a chance to read the article, I highly recommend that you do. It's available and it's available for free access under the Chronicle. Again, thank you for joining us today. I want to thank the audience as well, the participants in this webinar for their fantastic questions and joining us. This is a topic that will continue to be of great interest to this community, and I think if you follow Scott, you will see that he will continue to contribute to the conversation to our good. And so again, thank you, Scott, for joining us. Thank you to the audience for being a part of this. And we invite you to participate in additional seminars as we roll them out. So thank you, everyone.
thank you, Jim. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.